Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chin Music GPP podcast. I'm Big Italy 42, joined here by Scott Mailwig at Sports25 to Life on Twitter. And we're going to give you the breakdown on FanDuel and DraftKings, some GPP targets for all your games. And we're going to go game by game here and give you our analysis and each player we think we can target from each game here. So, you ready to get things going here, Scott?
Yeah, definitely. Love some Friday baseball.
All right. Huge slate as usual on a Friday. There's a weird little two-game early slate if you're brave. I don't like to throw my money into those things. It's kind of a plug-and-pray kind of thing in the morning. So GPP only, but for me, I'm going with the night slate here. And first up, we have Washington hosting Philadelphia. And this one's going to be Max Scherzer against Sean O'Sullivan. A hell of a mismatch here as far as starting pitchers go. Minus 240 favorite for Max Scherzer and a 7-run over-under. That right there tells you that Vegas isn't expecting a lot of runs, but they're really just saying they're not expecting a lot of runs from Philly because they're expecting Washington to get some runs. So Scherzer obviously in play. Kind of expensive as a GPP play, but at the same time, I mean, the second highest favorite on the board against a terrible Phillies lineup. So if you got 100 lineups, what's your number with Scherzer here tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be really high, but there's a couple other options I like here as far as pitching goes that I'm feeling pretty good about, honestly. So I'm thinking he's going to be in like that 35% range, I'm thinking, for GPPs at least. He'll be a little bit higher in cash games, probably up towards 50, but we're talking GPPs here. I think 35 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I mean, especially with the hugely weighted number for the win on FanDuel, with him being a minus 240 favorite, definitely want to get yourself as much exposure as you can to those guys who should be locked in the 4 points there. As far as hitters go in this game, a lot of the Washington guys in play. Bryce Harper in play here. Sean O'Sullivan, a career sixth pitcher type of guy, a long reliever. Never really been that good in the majors, so I like Bryce Harper. Shortstop's not a particularly deep position, so Ian Desmond's not a bad guy to target with lack of power there at shortstop. Who else do you like in this game?
I mean, it's mostly Washington hitters for me. I mean, it's really hard to target anyone against Scherzer. I'm looking at Wilson Ramos, maybe a catcher at a little bit weaker of a position. You already mentioned Harper. He's the obvious play here. 4,500 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel is a pretty decent price. Zimmerman's a cash game play for me as usual, but he just really hasn't had that upside I want for GPPs, and so I'm going to stay away from him. His price is a little bit better on FanDuel. I think you could play him in GPPs a little bit more there, but I don't want to pay $4,600 for his fairly limited upside on DraftKings.
Yeah, especially with so many games on the slate tonight. If you're going to be paying up for guys, you want guys with significant upside and power or steals, and he doesn't really provide that, like you said, more of a cash game play. So, like we said, all the guys kind of in play here on the Washington side, but at the same time, I'm not going out of my way to target a game at 7-run total, so I won't have a ton of exposure here. Next up, Milwaukee at Pittsburgh. Jeff Locke versus Jimmy Nelson, whatever you'd like to call him. And we've got a pretty close one here, according to Vegas. I lost my line now, but a minus 126 for Jeff Locke.
Yep.
Which is a little bit surprising to me. Jeff Locke was a little bit above average pitcher last year. Jimmy Nelson had an above average year as well. Got off to a great start, but this Pittsburgh lineup has just been terrible this year. They've got shut out 3 times already 2 games with just 2 runs scored. So really a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of guys striking out a lot. So I like James Nelson, whatever you want to call him. I like him quite a bit in tournaments here, especially at his price. He's got $6,600 on DraftKings, $6,800 on FanDuel. Jeff Locke at his price, Milwaukee's not exactly tearing the cover off the ball either, so I don't think he's a terrible option, but I'd much prefer Nelson in this spot.
Yeah, definitely. I do too. It's really hard to get on board with Locke here. The over-under's not bad, but Nelson just feels a little bit better. 6,600 on DraftKings feels pretty good on a 2-pitcher site. Neither guy is one that I'm really going out of my way to go after. There's just a lot better options on this slate, I think. But there's a couple hitters I like in this game, so it's going to work out a little bit.
Yeah, and Locke really good against lefties last year, 238 will allow, but awful against righties, 342. So I think that's going to kind of feed into your hitters here. So who are you looking at here?
I love Ryan Braun's price on both sites. 4,200 on DraftKings, 3,800 on FanDuel. He's off to a slow start with the injury, and I think he's only 7 for 28 so far. I don't even think he has an extra base hit yet, but I mean, I think he's going to break out. He's mashed left-handed pitching in his career. I like him as a great GPP play today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that price, like you mentioned, we know the kind of upside that he has when he's healthy, and it seems like he's finally turning around. And you've got some obvious guys on the other side. You've got your Andrew McCutcheons, your Pedro Alvarez with a ton of power. He's a guy with double dong upside that you like to target in GPPs as well. On the Milwaukee side, third base, he's got a good price, especially on DraftKings, is Aramis Ramirez. He's sitting at $3,600. I still prefer Kyle Seager at that price. I'll get to that later. Everybody knows about Seager at home against a righty, but I don't think Aramis in a bad spot there at $3,600 either.
No, look, that price is great for a guy that's crushed lefties in his career. He's another Brewer that's off to a slow start, though. These guys are going to break out eventually. They're too good at hitters to just be this terrible all season. So I really like this lineup quite a bit, honestly.
Yeah, this could be a good game to nice little contrarian stacks. I know some people will be looking at pitchers here and there, but I wouldn't mind stacking this game, and I'll be stacking pretty much every game tonight, as always on DraftKings. So I think this is not a bad target here. All right, next up, Atlanta at Toronto. We've got Julio Teheran against Drew Hutchison, and this one in the Rogers Center. I'm a little bit concerned about Julio Teheran here with being a fly ball prone pitcher. Always kind of concerned about taking him in a place like this. An 8-run total. Drew Hutchison, a minus 150 favorite. So that right there, aside from the lineup being much better in Toronto, that tells you right there that, Vegas expecting some runs scored. Probably a little bit concerned about Teheran's fly ball tendencies as well. And once again, the Toronto bats in play. Looks like Jose Reyes may be headed to the DL now. They said he has a fracture in his rib. That came out this morning. So that's unfortunate for him. But that's not going to keep me from playing Jose Bautista, who's at 5,100 on FanDuel and 48 on DraftKings today with that huge upside.
Yeah, definitely. You can feel pretty good about that, I think. It's hard to like really either of these pitchers today in this high over-under. They're both priced a little bit higher than I'd want to go as far as like even GPP plays, really. I think you can get some higher upside options for a little bit less. If I'm going to spend up $8,500 on DraftKings and $9,000 on FanDuel, I'm probably just going to go above Julio here and get one of the real studs. So I'm kind of avoiding them for the most part. I do like the Toronto bats quite a bit in this one. I mean, Jose Bautista is another guy that hasn't really broken out yet. Same with Encarnacion. Bautista's looked a little bit better than Encarnacion, so I feel a little bit better about him. But, I mean, I think Encarnacion's going to break out too. I don't love the prices there. There's nothing I really like that stands out to me individually in this game, but I think this is a pretty good game to stack as far as tournaments go because, I mean, they're going to be under-owned because they haven't been hitting like they really can and should be hitting. And they're a little bit overpriced, especially the middle of the order guys here. So I think it's going to be a pretty nice contrarian stack tonight for GPPs.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And one other guy I want to mention here, Josh Donaldson. He's a little bit pricey as well, $4,100 on FanDuel. His DraftKings price is up there as well at I believe it's $4,300. Yeah, $4,300. So, but if you're going to be playing Bautista, you're going to want to have Donaldson with him, especially if you're stacking, and you get yourself a nice little bit of upside. And Donaldson got to a slow start as well, but turning it around last couple of games, starting to hit. He's got 6 hits in his last 3 games, including 3 RBIs. So, I mean, there's a way to go in your tournaments as well. And Drew Hutchison's the guy that I don't mind targeting in tournaments. Like you said, you don't love his price tag, but as far as strikeout upside, there's few guys with higher strikeout upside in the night. 23.4% last year, and that Atlanta lineup is pretty terrible. So
yeah, right. With the heavy, with them being heavy underdogs, I mean their team run total can't be very high. I think I saw 3.5. So I don't dislike Hutchinson. He's much cheaper than Teheran. So I mean I think he's a decent GPP play here. Like you said, the strikeout upside's great, but I still think there's a bunch of other guys that we can target in that similar price range.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And speaking of the game that I will like to target here with hitters, Baltimore at Boston here. Ubaldo Jimenez against Joe Kelly. 2 guys who both had great debuts this season, but 2 guys who also have been pretty awful in their major league careers. Jimenez, a guy who really struggles with walks, didn't struggle in his first start, but Vegas has this one pegged at 8.5 run total. Joe Kelly in Boston, a minus 130 favorite. And I don't think there's been a hotter team in baseball offensively than the Red Sox. So, especially on FanDuel where these guys are pretty cheap, I'm going to be getting myself quite a bit of exposure. David Ortiz, $3,700. You've got Pedroia at $3,400. Even Mookie Betts is only $3,100 tonight.
Yeah.
So Boston's probably going to be a popular stack. I'm kind of hoping that they aren't, due to people maybe seeing Jimenez first start and overreacting. But I'm not buying either of these guys as viable pitching options until I see a hell of a lot more than this.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen this from Jimenez. We know he has the potential to be a really, really strong pitcher, but we've also seen him just completely blow up for like 4 or 5 starts in a row at times. So it's hard to know which guy's going to show up. His price is decent for how risky he is as far as GPP pitchers go. I just don't. I'm thinking like 1 out of every 5 or 6 times you're going to be really happy with what you get from him. I just don't know if that's what I'm looking for, especially against this Boston lineup that's looked pretty good so far. Like you said, the prices on the Boston guys are just incredibly low. Even Daniel Nava's only $2,300 on FanDuel, and I feel pretty good about him today. I think he's only $3,500 on DraftKings too, which is a pretty solid price there. He's a guy I'm looking at pretty heavily today with Jose Reyes out. I'm looking at Hanley Ramirez with his shortstop eligibility on DraftKings. He's a little bit pricey at $5,500, but there's just not a lot I love at shortstop today, so I'll be looking at him a little bit too.
Yeah, and Joe Kelly's got the weirdest price I've ever seen on FanDuel at $6,599. So they're trying to hook you up with that extra dollar there, I guess, on $6,600. So
yeah,
pretty strange. He's got a really cheap price on DraftKings. If you want to go maybe just stacking all big hitters and you're going cheap pitchers at $5,100, I'd rather go him than Jimenez personally, but really I'm not going to be going out of my way to target either one of these guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to either.
All right, next up we have Miami at the New York Mets. Bartolo Colon against David Phelps here. So old versus new, but bad versus bad. Colon, yeah, he doesn't usually get crushed. He's a guy who's just kind of quietly gets the job done, as we've been seeing for the past 35 years. But, he's a minus 134 favorite and a 7-run total, so this isn't a game that I'm going to be actively targeting hitters from either. But then again, David Phelps wasn't exactly very good last year. 356 WOBA allowed to righties. This is his first start of the season this year, coming out of the bullpen. So I like the Mets side. I like the Travis d'Arnaud, Lucas Duda stack. Has been popular recently. It's been working out well. They're batting 2-3 in the lineup, and d'Arnaud's the guy we're targeting a lot, GPPs and cash games today at his price and lineup position. But really outside of that, D. Gordon, I always like in tournaments because of his stolen base upside. Obviously Giancarlo Stanton, but no other names that really jump off at me. How about you?
Nobody really on Miami. Obviously, Stanton and Gordon are the guys you're going to look at there if you're taking anyone. As far as the Mets go, Kadyr's been red hot, and there's a lot of talk about how Citi Field has become more of a hitter's park this year, and the numbers are backing it up so far. I really can't argue with Kadyr. You already mentioned stacking the middle of their order. Just throwing him in there to complete that, I think, is a decent play today in tournaments. He's just been mashing the ball. I think he has 7 hits in those last 5 games, 5 or 6 RBIs. He's been a guy that is pretty consistent against both right-handed and left-handed pitching. I think he's a pretty interesting GPP play today too.
Yeah, and that's a good call. He's only $3,000 on FanDuel, I should say. And
only $4,100 on DraftKings too. So the price is nice there. You can stack anywhere in that Mets order for pretty cheap today, and I think it's a pretty interesting play.
Yeah, I like that call, definitely. Moving on to the next game now, we've got the Yankees at Tampa Bay. And this is an interesting matchup here where we've got Adam Warren against Nathan Karns. Warren was solid out of the bullpen last year, 23% strikeout rate. Decent ground ball rate, was really tough on lefties, 236 WOBA allowed. So he was solid, but wasn't a rotation guy. He's a small underdog to Nathan Karns, who had an okay first start in the majors here last week. But this one, I struggle with this one. It's only a 7.5 run total, but I don't really even have any desire to stack this game. Both these pitchers good enough, it seems, that they shouldn't get crushed, but I don't expect either one of them to go off in GPP either. So give me your take on this one, because I'm not in love with either side here.
Right. Warren is kind of interesting. His peripheral numbers are solid, but I just don't know if you're going to get him going deep in the game is my biggest concern with him. Even with the over-under being kind of low, my concern would be him only pitching 5 pretty strong innings and you being giving you acceptable total, but he's not going to give you a GPP type total. Carnes I like a little bit more. He had that really rough first outing against the Orioles, and then pitched really, really well against the Marlins. So there's some upside here. That 26% strikeout rate is solid. Um, I like him as a GPP play on DraftKings. 5,900. He's a guy I'm going to be looking at quite a bit. I think there's a lot of upside there, but there's also a lot of downside because, I mean, he could blow up for sure. And it's not an easy matchup by any means.
Yeah, but fortunately for him, he is in Tampa Bay at Tropicana and not
Yep.
in that small hitters park in New York, so that does work into his favor as well. So I like that as a GPP call, but yeah, like you said, and like I said, I mean, just not a lot of hitters that you really want to go out of your way to target in this one either.
No, I mean, Ellsbury I'm looking at a little bit. I like that 4,000 price on FanDuel. Um, Obviously, he has the speed factor there. Desmond Jennings is probably the one guy in Tampa Bay that I would be interested in. Without Longoria in the lineup, though, I'm just not really that excited about it. He left the game last night, right? I don't think he's going to play today.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen anything official, but it doesn't seem like he's going to go.
Yeah, it seems unlikely that he'd play today, and so that hurts their whole lineup, really, for me. Jennings has a pretty nice price on both sites. I think he's a solid play, but not someone I'm like going out of my way to get.
Yeah, I mean, and if Kevin Kiermaier's leading off, he's at $2,900 on FanDuel. I like him, but if he's down buried in the 7 or 8 hole again, then that's a no thanks for me. All right, next up, Oakland at Kansas City. You got Sonny Gray, a small favorite, which is a little surprising to me, against the awful Jeremy Guthrie, who just gets absolutely hammered by left-handed bats. Oakland's got some solid left-handed bats here. So Oakland is a stack that I like, and I actually don't mind Sonny Gray either as a pitcher. Tonight he's at $9,400 on FanDuel, $83 on DraftKings. So his price isn't great. His DraftKings price I think is really good, but a very small favorite, which I feel like would be concerning. But as I'm looking at this game, I do see the Vegas total being close, but I see Oakland having little trouble with Jeremy Guthrie tonight.
Yeah, that's the thing is like, I mean, I think this game's going to be a little bit higher scoring than it's expected is probably what it's going to be. I mean, the Royals have looked pretty good. I think they're first in WOBA against right-handed pitchers right now. And, I mean, they're just stacked with lefties, with Moustakas looking pretty good so far. I really like their lineup. We talked about this earlier in the week, I think, about the Royals. And when some of their other guys start hitting, they're going to be in really good shape. There's definitely upside with Gray. I just don't know if I'm willing to pay for it today.
Yeah, I hear you there. I think he's a fine SP2 option, but I mean, like you said, it should be higher scoring. The Royals been hitting the ball well, so you got some hitters in play here. Lorenzo Cain, absolutely on fire right now. He's at $3,500 on FanDuel, $43 on DraftKings, so he makes for a fine play. Sal Perez has been hitting the ball well, but buried in the order still, so that's an unfortunate situation for him. I don't want to go out of my way to target him. You got Mike Moustakas still hitting that 2-hole against lefties and righties. He's got a solid price tag. Also, I mean,
Yeah.
Kendrys Morales even. I mean, last 2 games struggled, but off to a nice start too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll be looking a little bit more at the Oakland guys today. You know how much I like playing Ben Zobrist at second base, so he'll be a guy I'm looking at, especially on FanDuel for $3,700. I know he's dealing with a heel injury right now, but he's looked pretty good lately. Ike Davis is kind of interesting at $2,700 too, against a righty. Sam Fold is another guy I've been playing a decent amount as a value guy. He's been off to a pretty decent start. He's just not a high upside guy. I feel like he's more of a cash game play than a GPP play.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about Stephen Vogt as well. Like I mentioned, Guthrie terrible against lefties. He should be right around the heart of that order, but not a ton of upside. He's got a decent amount of power, but nothing that's substantial. But fortunately, he's got a nice price tag, especially on FanDuel, which is $2,900. On DraftKings, he's at $38, so I don't mind him as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind this as a stack either. I mean, really either side of this game. I think it'll be a lower owned stack, like you said, because Vegas has it pegged as a low total, but we won't really see it that way though.
Yeah,
right,
definitely.
Next up on the docket here, we've got the Angels at the Houston Astros, and Jared Weaver, a guy that I like to pick on. Not a big fan of his. Roberto Fausto Carmona Hernandez, whatever you want to call him, on the other side. I mean, this one I will definitely be targeting with some bats. I don't trust either one of these pitchers, and Vegas agrees. Highest total on the night at 9 runs. Jared Weaver, the default favorite in this one at -116. So he's a fly ball pitcher. Hernandez, a ground ball pitcher, but not a very good one. And neither one with elite upside. I mean, Weaver last year right around league average in strikeout rate, walk rate, way above it in fly ball rate. So I'm expecting some fireworks in this game tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love Trout in this game. His price is ridiculous today. I think he's 57 on FanDuel and 58 on DraftKings, but I really like him. Minute Maid gives up a ton of home runs. Fausto / Roberto. I mean, Trout's been crushing right-handers. It seems like he has more power against right-handers. 274 ISO against, or 283 ISO against right-handed pitching. I mean, I hate paying 5,800 for someone on DraftKings in the outfield, but I feel really strongly that Trout is the top outfield play tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to argue that, especially if I haven't seen anything official about Cole Calhoun. He was still out of the lineup last time. If he sits once again, I mean, Trout's going to be the guy kind of carrying the load there, because you're going to have Eric Ibar with very little power at the top. But I think a lot of the power bats in play here also. Chris Carter is an interesting play at just $2,600 on FanDuel.
Yep.
Obviously off to just about the worst start you could possibly have so far this season. I mean, seemingly striking out every at-bat, hardly even putting the ball in play. But, I mean, the guy's got a ton of power, especially at home. So, I mean, 37 on DraftKings, I don't know that I'm going to be playing him much, but $2,600 on FanDuel, I'm going to get myself some Chris Carter exposure.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the bats in both these games. Like you mentioned with Ibar hitting at the top of the lineup if Calhoun can't go. I mean, that's a pretty cheap stack you can get. I mean, Pujols isn't expensive, Freese isn't expensive, Joyce isn't expensive. I mean, that's an interesting Angels stack. And even on the other side, I mean, there's not as much power with Houston, but like we said, the ballpark's nice in terms of home runs. Jed Lowry's been hitting pretty highly in the lineup despite a pretty low price tag. Jose Altuve is a guy that everyone's been on as a second baseman so far this season because he's had a nice start. His price isn't outrageous. He adds a little bit of the speed element too. Another guy with a nice price on Houston is Luis Valbuena. 3,000 on FanDuel, 3,700 on DraftKings. 355 WOBA against right-handed pitching last year. I think he's a pretty decent play. You can get a pretty cheap stack on both sides of this game if you want.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you there. So really most of these guys in play, see how the lineups shake out, see if Calhoun comes back, what happens with the Angels. But yeah, this game has the highest total of the night for a reason. So get yourself some offensive exposure to this one. Here's another game that has a high total, but really one-sided. Cleveland a minus 170 favorite with Corey Kluber on the mound against Mike Pelfrey. Mike Pelfrey, the kind of guy who couldn't make a rotation, the guy who couldn't hardly manage being in the bullpen. He's a pretty awful pitcher. He didn't pitch a lot of innings last year, but in the minimal amount, his walk rate was almost twice as high as his strikeout rate. He was just absolutely terrible, and I'm going to be picking on him quite a bit today. As we know, Cleveland struggles with lefties. They're really good against righties. Michael Brantley could be back in the lineup today. Took batting practice yesterday, so that's encouraging for them and for their lineup. But as you see this at an 8.5 run total, you can't imagine that Minnesota's going to score a lot of runs off Kluber.
Yeah, right. Kluber's probably my favorite GPP pitching play today. I really like him. 9,800 on DraftKings I feel like is kind of a steal, especially compared to like what Scherzer is and Kershaw is. I really like him today. I think he's the best play out of those aces in terms of price. I think Kershaw is obviously the top play overall. I think he has the ability to just shut down that Colorado lineup still. But Kluber's my favorite GPP play at pitcher.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And only $9,800 on DraftKings is a tremendous price for him. He's got a 28.3% strikeout rate from last season, which is even higher than Max Scherzer. Great ground ball rate. I mean, he's got everything going for him.
Hey, he K'd 10 guys last time out, too.
Yeah, and I mean, his WOBA against righties last year was really impressive, 246. So just mows these guys down. I'm a big fan of Kluber tonight as well. And because of that, I'm really not targeting any Minnesota guys outside of one guy in tournaments, Kenneth Vargas, $3,500 on DraftKings and just $2,400 on FanDuel. I don't know. I'm not a big believer in BVP, but I do remember a distinct time last year where he had a huge game against Corey Kluber, crushed all my Kluber lineups. So if you want a really cheap guy, he has had some success against it. Still not buying the BVP thing, but for me, I'll play him a little bit if I'm not playing Kluber, but I'm going to get myself some exposure to some of these Cleveland bats as well.
Yeah, I like Kipnis quite a bit, especially on FanDuel. He's only 3,400. That's just a fantastic price for him, especially at a fairly weak position. Santana's a guy I like quite a bit too. 3,400 on FanDuel. DraftKings is a little bit pricey for me at 4,700. I think we can look at Brandon Moss, Michael Bourne also. I really like anyone in this lineup against Pelfrey tonight. I think you can make an argument for all of them.
Yeah, and as weak as shortstop is, if we could see a Micah Vilas or Jose Ramirez up there in the 2-hole,
Yeah.
preferably for me, Jose Ramirez, because he's got a little bit more power, a little bit more speed. I wouldn't mind either one of those guys. I think he'd be more likely, since they're facing a righty, to be in the 2-hole, but that's all going to remain to be seen. But I would like to get myself some cheap exposure to Mike Pelfrey and also get rid of that awful shortstop position tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Cincinnati at St. Louis is next up. And we've got in this one Johnny Cueto against Michael Wacha. And really not wanting to target a lot of bats in this one. 6.5 run total. Cueto's had some success against St. Louis. Wacha's had a ton of success against the Reds, especially the heart of that order. He's really dominated guys like Phillips, Bruce, Hamilton. And I saw actually those guys combined 3 for 46 against him if you're that BVP guy that I keep talking about, but I swear I'm not. But either way, I don't know that I'm necessarily going out of my way to play these pitchers either. I mean, this one seems like it's going to be low total, of course. Should be low scoring. Neither one a slam dunk for the win, obviously. We've got a small favorite for Michael Wacha at minus 125. But I think they're both in play for GPPs as far as the pitchers go. Both have significant upside. I mean, Cueto 25% strikeout rate last year, Wacha 21. Both those guys, when they're on, they're dominant. And I'm really not going to be targeting any hitters in this one.
Yeah, the only guy I'm really looking at all as far as hitters is Joey Votto. I think he's got a decent price on both sites. Does pretty well against right-handed pitching. But like you said, it comes down to the pitchers here, and with neither one of them being a big favorite, it's hard to really love either of them. I'd probably lean Wacha as the slight favorite here and the nice discount on price from Cueto. I think they're so similar that it's really hard to play Cueto when you can just play Wacha as the slight favorite here. I think he's a pretty solid tournament play. There's plenty of upside, especially if he gets the win. He's going to be a guy I mix into my GPPs a little bit to get off some of these aces that I know are going to be heavily owned.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And like I said, again, it's a huge slate, so you don't want to get too much exposure to any one. You also don't want to force guys into your lineup that are in a really low total, like a pitcher's duel like this one. So next up, a little surprised by the total here, but a lot of it's probably the ballpark factor. 7-run total. Seattle a minus 148 favorite with J.A. Happ over Yovani Gallardo. A little surprised also at Happ being such a big favorite. I mean, struggled against lefties in a big way last year, despite being a lefty. 379 WOBA allowed. Not very good against righties either. Gallardo was once a good pitcher. Still a fine ground ball pitcher, but not a guy that strikes out a ton of batters. Happ obviously isn't either. So you pretty much have 2 average pitchers against 2 average lineups. So you've got your guys that are in play. You're obviously Kyle Seager, Adrian Beltre, Robinson Cano. Outside of that, there's not a ton of guys I love here. How about you?
Yeah, you mentioned Seager and Cano. I think the Mariners are going to load up on as many lefties as they can against Gallardo here. I'm not a big fan of Gallardo tonight. I do prefer Happ. I think that he's the rightful favorite here.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything special about him particularly other than the fact that I do think he's a pretty solid favorite, but I'm not going to go after the pitchers. There's not a lot to like as far as hitters go. Smolinski's under 3,000 on both sites against a lefty. I think he's a guy you can take a look at. I think he makes a great value playing GPPs to help load up on the rest of your lineup. Seager and Cano, like you mentioned, are the 2 lefties that you should probably want to target against Gallardo here. I don't mind Nelson Cruz. He's just a little bit pricey for a righty-righty matchup against a ground ball pitcher. So it's not a game I want to stack. If I'm using anyone from this game, it's probably going to be Seager and Cano on their own as complementary plays.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cruz is going to be really heavily owned with his ridiculous run he's on right now. 6 homers in his last 5 games. Don't know that you're necessarily expecting that again. But
right.
One more guy I'll mention if he's in the lineup. Seth Smith has had some success against righties. So I don't mind him if you want that. He's got really cheap price tag at $2,400 on FanDuel. His DraftKings price tag, I'll have to find that real quick here, is 37. So obviously a little bit better of a play on FanDuel, but I don't mind him at all tonight either.
Definitely.
All right, 2 more games here we have on tap. we've got Colorado at Los Angeles. And we all know the story here. It's Clayton Kershaw against anyone, so you want Clayton Kershaw. And Kyle Kendrick on the other side, who blew everyone's mind with that huge performance the first game, and then turned it right back around by sucking, I guess you could say, against the Cubs. Not horrible, I guess, but pretty much a Kyle Kendrick type of performance.
Yeah.
8 hits, 5 walks, 3 Ks in 5 innings. That's about what you're going to expect out of Kyle Kendrick. And so there's obviously no way I'm playing Kyle Kendrick. You want to get some Clayton Kershaw if you can. And the Los Angeles Dodgers bats then are going to be in play here, obviously, with Kendrick on the mound. So you've got your obvious guys, your Adrian Gonzalez, who's still one of the hottest hitters on the planet. Howie Kendrick's been batting behind him. I think he's an okay play as well. Jimmy Rollins batting at the top of that order at a really weak position tonight. Those are going to be my main targets from this one.
Yeah, the only other one I have here is Ethier. I like against the righty. I think he's a solid play, especially if he's hitting right in that core. I like Rollins. Rollins is probably going to be my most used guy from that lineup just because his price is down a little bit, and like you mentioned, shortstop is just kind of a wasteland tonight.
Yeah, and Ethier's got a nice price tag, $2,600 on FanDuel,
Yep.
$31 on DraftKings. So, like you mentioned, if he's in there like 5, 6, somewhere in that order right there,
Right.
You're going to love that tonight. So, all right, but with that being said, I'm not touching any Colorado Rockies bats. I don't play anyone against Kershaw. Enough said. If he blows up again and you played someone against him, good for you. You made the wrong decision. All right, last game we've got on the tap here. Arizona at the San Francisco Giants. Jake Peavy versus Josh Collmenter. And 2 okay pitchers here. Nobody I'm going to go out of my way to target. Peavy a 145 favorite. 7-run total, obviously a hitter's park there in San Francisco. Collmenter average as well. So, you know, the best bats in this one are pricey. You got your Buster Posey, obviously he's going to be expensive. Goldschmidt's going to be expensive. Goldschmidt especially swinging a hot bat right now. I think both those guys are in play. Outside of that, I'm really not trying to target a lot of these guys just because, I mean, it is a fairly low total. It is a pitcher's park. And I'm not trying to pick on either one of these guys. So are there any guys you're going out of your way to look at here in this one?
Yeah, nobody like I'm really excited about. Don't mind Goldschmidt a little, I guess. I mean, he's a GPP play almost every time. Posey, I guess, a catcher. I mean, I still like those prices basically every day. Angel Pagan is a guy that's been hitting third every day and is under 4,000 on both sites. I mean, there's guys you can look at, but there's no one that really jumps out at you.
Yeah, that's how this one looks. Once again, 7-run total, pitcher's park. Don't love either pitcher. I don't think that a guy like Peavy would be a terrible option in a GPP, but just not a lot of upside either with this guy because, I mean, he's, like I said, pretty average pitcher, 18.5% strikeout rate, 7.4 walk rate. I mean, that's pretty much exactly league average. So,
yeah, and he's priced like he's better than that too. Is the bigger problem, especially on DraftKings where he's 8,200. He's almost unusable.
Yeah.
With like Waka at 8,000 there, I mean, there's really no reason to take Peavy at that price. I mean, 7,600 on FanDuel is a little more palatable, but like you said, everything's average about him right now. The matchup's average, the over/under's average. Like you're just hoping to catch lightning in a bottle by playing him, and that's not usually the type of play I like to play.
Yeah, and Peavy's a contact pitcher, so you're just hoping they make contact in all the right places for him to pay
Right.
big today. And on this huge slate, that's not a risk I'm trying to take. So with that, that's going to wrap things up for us here on the Chin Music GPP podcast. So we will see you guys again next time. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you again.